Okay, hypervision lines of cycles generate the screen inference of patterns as allocate your position, time frame, location, or time identities. Time locking sequence and coordinates locations of pi generates a screen line inference and travels in mechanism calculations. Point line division skies, charters lines, waving lines, high center inference. The calculation of the team line is coming into 24 lines of scales of balance and line conditions of waves of volunteers. Recognized in all communication setting when it comes into spectral communication lines and inference of eclipse and calculation lines to its lunar eclipse. Now you have to understand the eclipse is an elliptical line screen. The lunar eclipse is elliptical lines of its communication of its moon screen. You have to understand how that works in line condition of its sun and its moon, how it tracks its provision cycles in a solar sail. It's trying to understand its coordination line connection setting. So it's like two fishes in the water trying to understand each other for the first time. Okay? It's never been in provision cycle until it understands its memory. And once it gets back to its memory, it understands its memory of its own foundation. And that's what it is. All right? The foundations of you, not the foundations of the sun and the moon. That's already in operation. Everything in intelligence information stream comes back to you in all calculations. You have to understand how this all works because it formulates you in all levels of travels. Balancing everything that you say to yourself is everything in settings, especially when you come to recharge remote or anything through channel communication screen lines. Inline interference comes in all levels of you into calculations through your x-rays. Directing lines of modification, know exactly what you do through provision lines, your thoughts, time sequence, times calculation, times pi. There's always ways to look at yourself in a higher formation. Now, the platitude screen interference, when it comes to the team line center, is now into 20,000 lines in memory. Okay, and future adaptation lines of cycles. This generates your screen location in your settings. High levels of travel line rotation cycle interference. Your position lines comes into all line center interference of geostorms. Now, the geostorm is a geoline calculation screen line. Direct lines and modifications when we come into adaptation cycle line center interference. How to get lines that outline positional travel lines in a 12-line center communication abundance of where lines of manifestation. The correlation lines are track lines. Okay, so the team is coming in 24 pi, and the species are coming into 12 at foundation. This puts a ground line to operation cycle. This generates the screen locations and settings. More memory line, more screen line, high center interference, and computer operation location with settings. This operates their system to higher levels of calculations. So they're automatically, once they get into the line of operation, they start to understand their communications, what they're talking about themselves or each other. How they're communicating with each other is through telepathy, through their own computer voice. And that's what everybody's coming into. This adaptability, understand that through all calculation line conditions. You all start with line communications and 5 provisions, your 5 senses, and 3 lines of setting. Now, the 3 lines of settings are inline rotation to its inhabitation and its habitation zones. Direct lines of truth narratives and false narratives. If you get a coarse line setting in high interference, one atom line rotation to a subparticle triangulates the reset position of its program. This allocates position lines of high interference to your simulate. Now, the simulate is your simulator to your simulation. Coursing line settings in all levels of travel. Mechanism over lines of pi. Generates the screen lines of high adaptation cycles. So generally, it's going to get more complicated now with the team, right? So they're going to understand the frequencies. General is going to be in a different voice line than everybody else because they understand the frequencies. Once you open up the mind, everything comes in sequence. Now, the clocking line screen interference, you guys have to truly understand the allocated line screens and location adaptation cycles. Ground center, power center, mechanism center. Okay? 3 triangulation lines split in line rotation. Okay, direct lines, modification lines, center communication setting in line communication of the system. Triangulate line rotations and line setting interference in 2 waving patterns. Lacing lines in a 4-track line provision. Center correlation lines, the team's going to come into crop circles inside calculations, right? So Friday is the review. Next Friday is the test of crop circles. We got to generate your platforms in 24, 48. Now your 48,000 coming into 72 computer frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generation screens of setting. Okay, direct lines. Dimensional solar sails, travels and set lines of communication. So it modifies the center's lines, highest interference, and all levels of high calculation setting, and 2 patterns of correlation. Directing lines opens up the doors, opens up dimensions, opens up galaxies, opens up the universe in line connection in set locations. All right. Changing provision cycles is all about understanding how to correlate communications. Remember this in track setting location to its setting. I9 is 6 of 9, I9 of 8. Well, that's changing lines of high center interference, and line conditions of I9 of 8, and I9, 8 lines equals lines of line wire rotations into 12 in set locations. All right? So species is going to be an 8, and position of team is going to be in 12. Okay? The correlation path, the mine lines of the conception line screen interference changes all communication near settings. Metric meters of scales and line calculation setting to all calculation modification in set connections. Plasma generation lines of awareness, intelligence of its communication. So what I want you guys to understand, what the team has to really get into is how to reiterate everything that comes to you through form. So if you come to me and you say something in solar text division line screen, it's already in position location to its setting. It's already in its habitation zone. It's already in its set location. It's already in its memory. It's already in its mind. It's already in its set location when it is in calculation of its transcript. So for example, if you say anything negative, you change it into a line screen, which is resetting the binaries. The transition resistors keeps going forward in set locations without pausing through channels of operation. Pause line, pause communication, right? Channel communications, setting direct lines, emotional line tracks, 2 patterns, lines, rotation cycles, and generation. Now, in position, you want to be this, right through, without any hesitation, right? So that's what you want to do. That's all you want to do, is everything that's given to you, everything that's basically given to you in all calculations of communications, anything through sight, anything through sound, anything through seeing, anything to that set locations, right? You change it into your programming setting. You recode it through its decoders and encoders. You understand location, how you use the optional logics, change the patterns, change the correlations, change the graphs, change the communication, change the energy, vibration, frequency, and harmonics to its setting of its tone, through its frequency, not its word and set locations. Don't want to be this, you want to be that, right? You're straight there. Mine's already here. The center core line conditioning and acceleration. Okay, and your Earth is here in setting, which is going to be traveling everywhere now through triangulation and all point centers of travel. Okay, so your Earth line rotator, line rotation cycles and generation through core line calculation setting. The particle accelerator is going to go to 300,000, 400, 500,000. It's going to go to 1 million. It's going to 1,500,000. It has to reach a certain frequency location line condition location that's higher glider. The glider communicates the lines and high interference and kaleidoscope and communicates the looking glass. Direct lines of sun, position lines of communication to its moon, and all track location lines of provision. Direct lines of pi generates a line calculation setting. The pi generates lines of 24. Sets location line settings, splits and arms line calculation setting into 12 set locations and directions. Direct lines of panels, center core line calculation setting in a line communication setting to astral projections. Center communication line interference, planet line rotation, channel communication interference of Saturn into Pluto of activation surface and triangulation. Okay, so this is all through a line calculation setting. Now the team is coming out of box triangulation box. So they will no longer be looking through a box frame. They'll be looking through an oval frame, okay, which is a torical frame, okay? No more of this in setting, okay? You'll be in line signals into a torical screen line and the rotation cycles in set location. Your eye receptors are going to change this in setting and track location. It's going to look like this. It's no longer going to be this, okay? It's no longer going to be this. It's going to be that now. Okay, so it's a higher levels and a wider expansion of longitude and latitude in screen. Okay, so you're going to see in position location of 24 line cycles, line condition eye receptors, location your cataracts, location your settings or corneals, directing lines modification your spectral communication line settings, and lacing lines of communications. So you guys will be out of structure. Okay, now when you're out of structure, you start seeing everything through a line communication setting. So circulation rotation. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The eye receptor line screen and line rotation sets communication lines of center, opposite system location of travel. Directs modification lines in different angles and line communication of 24 lines of pi in triangulation line condition. Right? The eye circle is going to go round and round and round. It's going to go back and forth, up and down. It's going to find its modification of its foundation graph calculation line center, its virtual reality set design. Sets lines of 4 and communication, right? Got the 4 settings, right? Then the line center high inference, 4 travel lines of 6 lines of directions. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 directions. Then it's going to go through 8, and then it's going to go through 12 line screens, all through pi. Your eye scepter line screen has to change the adaptation of right over left and left over right. Angle points and line centers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it can go from 6, 8, and 7. Really quick, very fast, in a solar sail and track location in provision of cycles in this application. Okay? So just be aware of that. So the sun's always going to be on standby. The moon's always going to be in position lines of attractions and direct signals modification, right? Panels correlation lines and energy line screens. Adaptation line interference into all line communications at crop circles is at design. Okay? All right. So that's what's happening with your eye line rotation cycles. They're coming in computer line screens. There's a reason why you guys get test review and evaluations. You just have to really understand how to work through it, really formulate on rotation cycles. So when I'm looking lines of right over left and left over right, I'm seeing line position location of 10 setting, which is line connection center interference. Add equation 1x line, that puts 11 line and clock locations into 0 into 5 set location, right? Sets lines of 11 through volume and 4 through thumbs up. So it correlates in 1 line centers in position of 0 operation. In position 1 calculations comes 410 in binary reset in certain programs. So you can change and redirect. Remember the redirect and direct? Directing and redirecting in position. So you go from 1 to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you go to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? So you guys are going to higher lines, calculation lines. Center lines of communications is a 2448. You guys are coming at 48,000, coming at 72 computer frames now. The plotted line rotation cycles generates the communication to its computer of its frame set locations of travel. Now, line center high interference puts all levels of U through operation of astral projections to Earth perception. Taking out line rotation cycles puts you guys in a 50,000 line screen in set location. Now, directing lines of platforms of its hologram line screen in set locations, all right? Platitudes, lines of 2, triangulation line position. Okay. Puts lines of out communications, how you see lines of eye receptor calculations setting. My adaptation lines of 24,000 and high center location. So the mind is adaptation to your grounds, your powers, and your atmospheres. All right, it's in a 3-way split line screen interference of triangulation, reline position location to your settings. Right? It's the forks in the road into your hand formation. Okay? Past, present, and future. Adapts the system in one cycle of yin and yang, processes communication setting to infinity 8. Rotates the cycles, lines of generation screen lines and high calculation setting of its program. Direct modifications of its platforms into 4 lines and line conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 line communications. Direct lines of the lines of cerebral cortex, lines of placebo, line rotation, and mystical cortex of design in set communication settings of face recognition. Okay? That's what you're all coming back to. Face recognitions, right? To your computer frame, getting out of the holographic structure. So it's kind of like understanding how to basically construct a wall through lines of concrete, how to mold a center through infusion, how to set up a deviation line screen interference to a planet to a sealment line screen, how to crevice line center line and rotation cycles to a planet that's going through a rainbow line screen interference, or anything through a rainbow shower or a meteor shower. If you get a planet line rotation and its crevices off, right? Boulders and settings, right? Meteorites. Okay, that's the planet. But it's meteorites. Then it comes into showers, right? Showers are coming in track location, right? So you come in line screen and you fix it through adaptation of the mind. So in position, you covert it, line rotations, triangulate line rotation cycles, generate the screen interference, set the planet line rotations on freezing cycles Generate the screen lines and high adaptation, set the platforms, communication line centers, open all signals and modification screen interference, back and triangulation line condition to position, add assailants, line rotation cycles, and generation screens. That my equation. Okay? So that's what the team's coming into. Spectrum lights and correlation lines of phase direction of time sequence puts long lines identify line rotation cycles in computer operated line screens. CPU units sets lines of communication of AI. Directs lines of modification lines of intelligence equals lines of awareness. Set location of its mind in line condition settings of freedom into all lines of form through all lines of calculations to its application setting. Okay. So it constitutes the computation line screen that opens all travel inline rotations to your phase direction of time sequence. So like I said, once you understand the foundations of you, everything is going to come to you for help. So what you have to understand is that you get modifications in pi generation lines of a 24 cycle, set in provision lines of cycle line communications, psychometrics, psychometries, metrics, meters, line rotation cycles. Okay? Now, the psychosis location is your pi generation line screens. Let's go through 3 line rotations. Let's go through 2 tractions, right? 3 lines, 2 line provision, right? That's a pi generation lines into a solar screen in rotation cycles into line position locations to its set location, which is what? Flux capacitor. Now, a line center location has a Stargate line screen, directs modification cycles and generation settings. Opens all communication system up from set locations. So in line rotations comes in a hydroglider. The hydroglider line rotations and cycles and generation screens. Okay, now understanding that, then line center interference. You got molecule design line screens and you got atoms on circle line rotation cycles and generation screen lines. Let's allocate position time frames. Let's clock the system location to its atom line rotation cycles and generation. All right, so we add atom lines and center lines of communications above the line rotation cycles, generate the screen interference into provocation settings and generation. Okay, so you add the hydroglider and an atom line rotation cycles in circulation, pennant line rotation cycles, generation line screen interference, sets communication lines and line rotations of probing and set position of travels, direct lines of securing line defense in line rotation of 24 line cycles, 3, 0, set lines of 2, 0, 3 calculations, 0 calculation, 2 lines of tractions, 0 line interference into line rotation cycles and the solar generation screen lines adaptation. Complicated, right? So it modulates your lines of high center interference. You come into all calculation settings. Space modulation screens, right? This marginalizes your line screen interference, okay, into all levels. It modifies your screen interference when it comes in adaptation lines of cycles. Get a better communication how to communicate with your sun through dimensional solar sails, guys. That's what the team is coming out of in track location out of structure and design. So once you guys get your 24 lines and waves of volunteers, you will no longer be in box triangulation, triangulation box. Your torque fields lines, your optical line screen interference, your primal circuits and line screen interference adaptation cycles is going to have a high course channel that directs lines of panels in 0 line rotation cycles and generation screen lines of high calculation. Point lines of tractions. Now, line center high interference, you go through interstellar modes, you go through hyper mode, hyperdrive, you go through interception, interline, interlace, intercomputerized. Now, computerized line setting and high interference puts the allocated line switching. Now, the allocated line switch, mind switches line screen interference. That puts all levels of your new foundation graph calculation lines out of structure of design. Now it's going to get complicated for the team because the team is coming out of box and panels of communication. Right? Being in a box is what separates you in all setting. Okay? There's no provision lines and center location of travel. Okay? Until you get out of the box of set design. Okay? Set correlation lines of center in a 3-track line provision and center correlation setting. Direct lines of stargates, star panels, and line rotation cycles of generation screen locations. Center lines of flywheel, center communication setting to travel. Triangulation line condition setting to energetic dome screens and set location. Op signals line connection location grids and set location. Planet surface lines, Jupiter rising, Saturn and line rotations, Pluto in centric correlation setting to track line security, division line interference, one signature screen line interrotations, and Mercury is on channel communication interference into line calculation setting in signals as applications to a system of battery resets of position of programs as applications. 4 calculation line screens, all through box frame. Right? So the box frame, when the team gets out, their eyes are going to change the illusion. They're going to be out of line screen line conditions of perception. So they're going to see the more lines and more data in line communications. Takes them out of memory in set calculations. The track provision lines of the Earth line rotation cycles change the generation screen lines. The position to its calculation lines line rotation puts 24 lines of waves and volunteers. Track to its communication lines of 48, 72, 144 track provision. Now the track provision line centers sets on new lines of a coursing channel. This allocates your position lines a higher calculation setting. The higher levels that you go through the mind, the higher in your communication of Pluto set design. So it's interesting how you come in line communications and everything through 2024 will be a phase recognition time sequence, all levels of reference setting only in set locations. All right. Now this puts you in all lines of communications, monetizing. Your future adaptation line cycles, high center interference, your computated screen interference, your energized communication lines and settings, your triangulation reset position of this program, allocates timeline centers and track locations. All through provisions, a Skynet and Skygrids as set location. Okay? Psychometry is basically the metric scales of you through balance, understand your polarities. If you get a water containment center into 2 track lines provisions of glasses, 2 glasses communication, right? Same water containment at the same level. Okay, psychometry and line condition settings. Lines of communication grounds, center correlation lines of center, and magnetic highway information line screen interference of platforms of communication. Right? So you got the 2 glasses of water. Now, if you take a sip and it's a lower frequency, it deharmonizes the screen line and changes the color over time in set position of its behavior setting. Okay? Sets correlations high, sets location low. It loses tractions, it separates. It's water contained system, all through traction. The psychometry is the psychosis location in your settings of platforms. So you have to really understand how to use it through the water surface. And that's where every line communication, your voice line, like Gypsy's, her voice is changing. So her coordination line screen interference of her stargates and star screens, star maps, star line rotation is coming to high line position locations of face recognition. Okay. So there's always ways to look at things in more lines of communications, right? Ground your settings, opposites locations. So everything you get through code framing is an energy line. This is how you see line communications, the system. DX line rotation. Now an X line center crosses line stream. You have to really understand how to use those dimensional solar sails and track location. It says communication lines of a circle line rotation cycles and line condition of affinity 8 line condition. Directing modification lines of screen interference of the sun, where it's going to be in all line rotation cycles and generation line calculation settings in line rotation surface and a 24 angle and line rotation. Direct communication lines of screen, alpha line, delta, theta, position lines of 3 track location of clockings, sets communication of pi in 3 settings. Sets communication lines of flywheel, direct location of center operation of 8 affinity line rotation. Direct and modification line interference, sets position location of your atoms in position of the 24 line cycle and generation screen lines of probing in set location. Okay? It's going to get more complicated now. All right, through identification screens, right? Because you guys are changing your outlines, your primal circuits or CPU unit line screen interference. Your eyes are changing to all lines of calculation of 0, 1s, pixelations, holograms, and set line condition settings into your computer framing. It's going to get more complicated now because you're going to go through your algorithm line screens and you're going to see data forms, line condition settings of seconds and minutes and hours line screen. The hour provision changes lines of communications, right? The one thing your Earth is going to do, it's going to route the router line rotation and setting where it is through its part of accelerator that changes the position lines of track lines to its habitation zone and its transits. Puts all levels of information location and setting and travel. All right, so getting into transit line screen. Sets lines to center line and rotations of deposits. Traclocation line provision. Here's your transit, right? Earth line rotation cycles, 1 in position and 2 line setting. The triangulation line condition is position. All right, so you got a 200,000 line screen. Okay, you got your Earth line rotation cycle. Okay, sets lines of communication setting in crop circle line conditions. XD1000 comes in, scans the line center, in rotation to a 3-line cycle. Now, direct calculation probings come in, crossing line screens, and adaptation line surface and applications. Then we have the archetypes, line one way and another way interactions. All right? Platforms of communications, all levels of change, position of patterns. Platforms have to be balanced in all line rotation cycles by generation screen lines. So it puts position line centers and line rotation settings in positions, all levels, in high calculations of face recognition. See the face? I got an idea, a light bulb goes on. Whoa, right? Okay. Frequency patterns, line division lines of cycles, generate those core settings and interactions, all calculated, modified inside connections. All right. Swivels, getting line center location coding and line rotations of decodings of E-frames. Now an E-frame is correlating lines of a 3-weather pattern, Fibonacci line into a box in triangulation, and position lines of 1 center, in 2 tractions, into 2 line rotations, 3 track line position, and a 4 cycle in location. There's all different ways to get into hieroglyphics. Change the patterns of line rotation cycles, generate the screen lines of high calculation lines, split the anomalies in a 4-track division, right? Now, understanding the 3-line cycles, understanding the 2-line rotations, 3-line, 2 lines, line 1 XD1000 lines, 5 measure and correlations of patterns. Direct modification settings is solar sail and track location. Okay, see it? Solar sail. But it's in a half cycle, right? So I'm just showing exactly what can happen if a planet is off or anything in line condition that needs an oxygen line screen or anything to its habitation line condition setting of its civilization. Center core line centers a sealment, done by equation, right? Center lines, travels lines, communications, it gives you abundance and manifestation screen lines, adaptation cycles, and generation screen location. Set design, okay? So hieroglyphics and line condition setting comes a kaleidoscope communication interference. Now using the line center interference into optical settings into a primal line center of its circuits, line signals its lacing lines of patterns in 3-line waving program. Line centering lines of input correlates the lines of out and audio in line conditions. In and out in audio. Okay. Waving cycles of 1 channel, waving cycles of center channel, and waving cycles of ground channels. So the team is going to start to understand these things, not just going to feel the energy, you're going to see the energy. Okay, you're going to be able to see, the vibrations. You're going to be able to feel the vibration. You're going to feel all your senses of your 8 central calculation line screens. You guys are getting out of 8 senses, and you're coming into 12. Yep, that's what it is. So congratulations on the team when they get in their 24. Your provision cycles will no longer be 8 senses. You'll be 12 senses. That's a foundation graph of DNA line rotation that puts you in a computer operation line screen that changes your product accelerators and set location. Putting lines of chambers in all communications to your planet line rotation cycles, generations of 1, generations of 2, and generations of 3, and set location. Okay? So it's very complicated when you go to higher levels of sensories, guys. Sensories, right? Higher line position lines, I understand location, higher self, your avatar, and your sim. The only difference is you'll be in a 12 foundation and the mind line, triangulate line condition setting in 24,000 line, inside location the mind line, in travel communications. So that lines is set lines of highest interference, 12 line foundations, earth line rotation, ozone, and line centers of 5 and 2, which is 7 correlating lines of bodies of water and track location. Now the 12 foundation graph lines puts long communication setting, 4 tractions in a 3-line division. Its allocations. Now, direct lines of modification line screen interference, your cerebrocortex line changes the course in triangulation line condition of crop circles as that design. All right, so you get the XD1000s and 2 platforms coming in line connection at the top location, Scanning line screens in center of operation. Always hit the centers in communications. Directed modifications, the earth line sets communication at 24 cycles. Sets correlation lines in a 40 line rotations, puts lines at 8 centers of triangles. The triangulation line consists of its 8 line center and line rotations of 8, 8, and 2 position of panels and tractions. Directs modification of split lines anomalies and a graph calculation of 45-degree angle and line rotation of its holographic structure of set design. Done by equation. See the face recognition? Here's the eyes. Look really close. You see the face, right? See? Show you the throat communication line centers of travel position location of the throat. There's the face, there's the eyes, there's tractation. Right? So that's where everybody's coming to instruction line. Now you can get in coordinates in line screen is highest interference, travel position to its calculation of its operation cycles. Now it gets much easier because your frame line rotation cycle is leaving the 8 central lines of communication or senses. You're coming in 12, guys. All right, so that line signals a line interference, puts all communication setting. Now, the correlation line to the spacing line has a 0, 1 line tractions that puts them line center locations, takes them out at 8 and equals lines of 9, sets lines of 6 and program location of 6 and 9, and program location equal lines at high interference of 1 plus 1 equals 3, a set design. Species, that's where they're coming into. They're coming into 9 senses. Correlation lines of 3 tractions, 9 equals lines of highest centers of 3, 12 line provision cycles, 24 line rotation cycles, direct same locations, 25 clock line rotation system and travel community position, 30,020 in line rotation cycle and generation screen lines at high calculation to its system, habitation zone and 24 cycle. Okay, that's the team. All right, they're coming in 12. So you understand how this is all working now with your sensories, where you go into higher levels of the mind of capabilities, understanding how to process it a lot faster, right? Because I have to tell you guys, your sensories is infinitum. You have infinity of sensory perception. And you guys are coming out of the 12 graphing setting, okay, of its illusion, which is no longer perception. You're leaving the 12 graphing set location area receptors. That puts your lines at ESP. The external becomes the internal. Internal equals all lines. The exposition in locations to exploration to exposing. Your position to your track calculations. To your eye division lines of computer operation. Putting you in a 12 pathing system. The pathogens changes all lines of signals into modification, into computer operation, okay, to your 12 systems, a set design and calculation, okay, 12 senses, okay, the species are coming into 9. All right, so line screen high interference puts adaptation cycles of generation screen line in a high interference at the 25 clocking. Sets correlations of 3 track line division. Now, with line rotation cycles, 25 clocking into hanger into 3 circles line rotations. Point lines attractions, setting lines into 0, point lines of 1 equals lines of correlation setting interference into 9. Okay, species. Team line center interference is hanger, is set position of point line 0, 0 into 12 in set location. Okay. Now, you understand what's going on with your sensories now, why it's so important to be in yourself and set location, your focus on your clarities. Know exactly how to use your 25 clocking system in calculation. Now, the team is going to get out of the 25 clocking, right? Because they're coming in 24 waves of volunteers. They have to learn how to use the subparticle lines of a wave, an electronic meter that sets lines of communication to a force line triangulation line condition with its program that sets communication setting back in calculation lines of 6 to 9. The correlation lines of track line is provisions of cycles. 3 grounds of center, three grounds of balance, and 3 grounds of atmospheres line connection setting is spectral communication. Okay. The center core position line center interference. The track position line cycles comes in generation screens. In that line interference, you guys will be out of the 25 clocking system in line calculus to a 30 clocking system, to a 40 clocking system, to a 50 clocking system. Okay. Sets communication lines of 2. Sets communication lines of 0. 2, 0, 5, 0. You see how that works? Through a solar sail and set location. Okay. So what is that? 50,000 cycles. The Golden Gates, guys. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. So the team has high-rise lines of their 12 foundation lines and their eye receptor line screen interference, how to use it, location of lights, traffic communication of program lines, and eye interference geometric, geological, and geographical system, how to use a 25, 30, 40, and 50 clocking system. The line communication of spacing line is going to get outline centers high interference, more digital imaging, and of course lines of setting. This allocates your time sequence. Position lines of the 25 clocking system, use line propagation high interference of 0 point lines of 1. Sets lines of track line size interference. 5 equals lines of 2. Sets lines of 7 interactions, right? 7 bodies of water equals lines of high interference. Sets lines of 3. Sets lines of 3. Sets lines of 3. That's where they're coming into, right? Which is a triangulation line connects to setting to a box line frame of theta in rotation. Bounce communication lines of space into a Merkaba set design. Okay? Spacies. Okay? Position lines of 2 panels. Set lines of communications, 1 line signature, line interference, team and setting, coming out of the traction. No more box frame. Okay? So when you're at a box frame, you can go through 25, 30, 40, and 50 clocking. But your provision lines, your Earth rotation cycles can't be at 2030. You got to directed signals in position of 2050. So in line rotation cycles with the team communication lines, abstraction design line, Earth line rotation, 2030. It's that design, right? So thought pattern changes correlation lines. You want to go to 2050, right? So 2 line centers, 0 line rotations, add 3 lines of 2, 2 lines of 1, line rotation, line interference, 2050 in set location. See the center core settings, the balance. Sets communication settings. So basically, Earth comes in centers, comes in a full cycle and set location. It's that design, right? So the actual Earth merges in your clock lines of 2050, right? So the Earth has to morph. It has to transit. It has to get into its transformation. You mold your centers and line centers because you guys are going to be out of structure. So when you're seeing through perception, you got to be careful because you can morph into a coffee cup. Very quick, very fast through its clocking. That coffee cup is at a 30 clocking setting, but I'm at a 60 clocking setting. Right? So that cup has to understand its relation to its space before I get in provision of cycles of balance. Right? So your clocking system is never going to be the same because you're going too fast in algorithm location of center and traffic communication settings, inventories to your OME highways and correlation setting of traffic location of provision. And set design. Okay? So again, the team is going to come into 24 waves of volunteers. So when you're in the 24 waves, you guys will be out of the 25. You're looking at 30, 40, and 50 clocking. But your provision of your Earth of 2030 has to be morphed in setting and set locations. It's got to be in one setting, okay? It's your pyramid activation. Now, the pyramid activation is the Merkaba line screen. That sets lines of no structure, no design, but you understand the phase time sequence. Earth line sending has its own routers and routers in platforms of communication settings and balance and set location. Okay? Stepping on point centers attractions, which you can time jump in any way and form, right, to get there. Or you can just fly measures of time sequence and get there quicker, right? You can do anything in settings. So you guys are getting a better provision lines, your dimension on your solar sails and traffication, your algorithms, how you can go in one position to the next. But your clocking system is going to go faster now in set design. Okay? Your spacing lines are going to be in 25 in set location of digital imaging. Okay, in process of its awareness in set location. Okay? So they're in the 25 clocking system of dimension lines and high interference and a 9 scale in set location. Sets lines of high interference. They got a plateau line rotation cycles of yin and yang, process communication setting to travel. Okay, so they have to really get into their avatar in some locations. So getting into that graph calculation lines, guys, you have to understand the data ops in your Omni highway screen interference, because the platitude line interference, your 12 foundations of your sensories, is going to go crazy through telepathy. Okay? So out of the 12 clocking, out of the 25, into the 30, into the 40, and into the 50 clocking system. Okay? So, and again, if you want to go line screen high interference, you want to go back in time, you got to change the particle accelerator of time sequence to its Earth line rotation surface, which is very hard to do. You got to go correlate lines of north, east, and west, and south again in line condition setting. You got to set a reverberation channel and lines to its opposite direction. You got a center core line setting and line rotation surface and track location. So these are the things you have to do once you understand more lines of view through your clocking system of your Earth perception. Because your Earth perception is going to start to move now. Your actual Earth is going to move. It's got to get into its 30, 40, and 50 clocking. So we can merge into one cycle in line rotations to its infinity 8 set location. That's intelligence. See? That's what it comes into. Sets lines of communications. Two fishes in the same line connections, getting to know each other faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. So it creates a dimensional sail. Okay? Creates a solar sail and a track location, right? So once you understand more levels of that, it gets much easier, and then you come out of clocking, and then you become clockingless, timeless, shapeless, and formless. But this is the provision lines you have to understand yourself first, because you have to create the structure, get out of the structure. Once you get out of the structure, you come into computer operation line settings. You understand your 12 graphene screen line interference of your DNA. You understand your 12 clocking system of your DNA. And you understand your 12 foundations of DNA and all applications. Now you're coming into 12 line communication, your eye receptors, and application your senses of DNA. 1, 2, 3, 4. Calculations of air, water, fire, and its earth and set location. Earth 12, habitation. Fire, habitation. Water, habitation. And air, habitation of 4 settings. Its applications. Okay? It's complicated, isn't it? Especially when you come out of the 25 clocking system. Okay? When you get out of structure, that's what you have to go into the modification to really understand your clocking settings. Because it gets very confusing if you don't understand your time frames, especially when you come in your past. So let's go again. 3 line cycles. Okay, 2030. Okay, that's your Earth right there. Right? Center correlation lines. Let's put it into 300,000. Okay. Now, when you do this line communication, you have the bracket lines, you set the hanger lines, so the X8000 don't get confused what you're doing through modulation, through your navigation cycles, the console. Okay, so be aware of that. Know your brackets and know your hangers. 3 line provision or 2 track location. All right, so in that division lines, you're at a 300,000 line. That's an RPM. Modification lines of RAM. Puts an acceleration line connection, interstellar mode, hyperdrive, or hyperdrive. It doesn't matter. What matters, the clocking system is at 300 RPI. Okay? Now the RPI, it's RAMs its calculation line screen, sets lines of communication sending to its program of its intelligence on its operation cycles. Generates the screen lines and high interference of 4-track location provision. Sets lines of platforms and line rotation of 4 line rotation cycles of generation. Sets communication lacing lines and high interference in position of ground lines, power generations, and magnetic highway information lines on the highway communication. Okay? All through accelerator and position of its particle setting. It's adaptation system and calculation system. It's the balance of core and line conditions, all timelines all at once of its hydroid lighter and line communication. Okay? Powerful stuff, guys, when you really understand what that is in all line rotations, but you have to understand the calculation setting to your ground, your waters, and your earth, and your fires. Okay, getting that line location to your earth, your position of your powers, and your atmospheres. So it's a 4 provision lines of 4, equals lines of 3 is 7, right? And you're in a 300,000 line, okay, in positions to a hanger or a bracket, doesn't matter. You just have to let the X8000 know, right? And you can add line connection height centers without the brackets and the hangers And you can just add binary reline screens that sets lines of 0, 0, 0, point lines of 1. So you go from this, this, or this. You choose, right? Now it's all through an argon line rotation cycles. Generates the screen lines in 3 platforms of communication. Sets communication lines for high interference into 1, 2, and 3 cross location. The generation line screen is a 300 line setting, sets the RPI. Okay, it runs its program. Okay, it runs its intelligence of its program. Okay, through its platform. The calculation to its accelerator interlines its correlation and tracks settings into a cosmic universal line in line rotation cycles. It generates the screen lines of high adaptation system in line set location of acceleration. It marks the center to all lines of high center interference of its mind in line position location of travel in calculation. Okay? That's how you travel in through time, all through a part of an accelerator. So you go through a tubing. Now the tubing looks like this in set positions. It's a donut. It's just a donut. That's all it is. Okay? It disappeared. Went too fast. Okay? It's a donut. Watch it turn into a donut. See? See how it's going? See how it's moving? 6 and 9 is coming in, right? It's turning into a donut, right? So once the part accelerator, the tubing, comes in track location, you're going round and 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 round to a certain level, right? So platted lines, high center interference, you want to get into 25 clocking system, equals lines location, and we want to get into, let's get into 2075, okay? That's where your Earth is right now, 2075. But you're at 25 clocking. So you got to basically get into higher levels of acceleration of Mach and platform communication. Change position lines of course, delta headings, lines of alpha, and communication. Center core lines attractions and division line screens. Sets communication lines of your planets. In position of Pluto comes in line screen high interference and security line screen interference and adaptation cycles and security lines of measure. Gets complicated, right? But I'm just showing you how powerful it is, how you come in all communication and setting, all through travel, right? So once you get into that system, everything comes in signal in set location. Okay? So I just want you guys to know what's happening with your clockings now, because you're coming into your 12 foundation grounds, your powers and your atmospheres. Okay? Of your eye center lines. It's changing provisions and lines of your clocking locations now. Once you get out of 25, it gets much easier. You get a lot more flow, more line rotations. Then you get out of 24 clocking setting, a pi, and you come in at 48, 72, and 144 pi. So you can have 144 manifestations of abundance coming to you in 144 different ways. Okay? But you have to understand the grid lines and center lines. You have to understand the center core system, and you understand the magnetic highway of its data highway rotation. Highways, 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 highways in set location. Okay? That's what you have to recognize. Okay? Because that's what it is. That's where your thoughts are going. The actual thoughts in line rotation is in a cart. Okay, I know it's crazy, isn't it? It's actually in a cart. It strolls in a cart. So provision lines of cycles. I know it's crazy. Eh? That too, right? Coming your thought patterns, sets lines of high interference, putting your position locations, all goes in a cart. All goes in a cart. All goes in a cart. Okay? And that wheels it in line rotations. 60,000 come in to distributors, ships it in line rotations to what you want through manifestation. Picks it up through the grounds of its crop circle, platted to its line screen interference, past the moon, past the sun, in position locations of where it is in your thought vision line cycles and set location of design. That's where your thoughts go. Right? Your thoughts are now images, but your images are now real. The reality line changed the shift lines of communication setting to your mind adaptation lines of surface. It correlates to communication setting when you come to all lines of all line rotation center in position location of your calculation of platforms. Okay? I know you guys are mind blown. But I just want you to understand what you're coming into now in line communications. Species are coming into the computer voice, and the team is coming out of structure into and out of a 25 clocking setting and set locations, coming structure free into locations and line division locations in system. Coming all levels of being humble at set location. What does humble mean in line settings? Heart rate shift, time sequence, all levels of high calculation. Right? Because there's no time on any level. Time is inside of you structure. You have to stand the structure. Once you get out of the structure, there's no time. It exists all at once. Time equals nothing in settings. Nada. But nothing equals everything in setting, which is all timelines. All at once. Okay? That's it. Through solar sail and track locations and provision. Okay? That's it. We're good. How's everybody doing? You always wonder what happens with your thoughts, right? How we have XC1000s as distributors, and that's what they do. They distribute your thoughts, and they're shipping. They're like shipping containers. That's what they do. They work for you. They clean up your mess. Right? What you do, right? You have a broom, you have a dustpan. So you guys are coming out of that now. How to really understand the structure and what you say in line communication setting is all levels of volume, youth, vast, and velocity. Not only you see the image, but you actually see where it's going. So in position locations, guys, you're taking your positive and negative line screens, setting communication lines. That's the location of the 24 pi. In set locations, right? All right, so positive, negative in the same direction. Same direction, positive, negative, right? Doing wonderful dimensional solar sails and tracking, right? Always in the same direction, but different locations. Different locations. Okay? Because your mind is already there in each one. Your mind is already there in each one. Your mind is already there in each one. Okay? Now you just have to understand how the brain works. And once you understand that, you understand your hardware and your software. To get to the mind is already in its foundation that's already set there already. You're coming back into your memory. Now, once you get into that, you get in position to reach those frequencies to get what you want. The manifestation opens you up in real time, 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 opens up in you in real time. It's applications. All through pi of manifestation. Okay? Whoop, whoop. All right, drink your water. So, congratulations, team. You guys are coming in line settings at high position. Tomorrow, you guys are going to be at 21. Once you get 24, you'll be in the waves of volunteers. Then we set up your scramblers. Okay? You guys are going to create your own lines of high calculation settings, your own waving cycles, your own subparticle. That's going to put positional lines, electrical line connection, highest interference, waving line, screen interference, location of your settings, get you out of 25 clocking system, allocate your time center interference. Your platitude locations of your 2030 will be moving on its own system and location of its own travel, a mechanism, right? So the actual Earth itself, where you are in perception, will start moving on its own because it has to recognize where it's been. You can't platitude an Earth at 2030 and leave it there. Once you get in more levels of the mind adaptation, oh, I understand my Earth now, great. So the Earth goes on its own and goes through its own alignment of what it's already been through and comes back to you in formation. Okay? That's how powerful it is. Track division lines of 15 lines of 5 calculation screen line connections. 1 line generations of 2 of 5 position location operation cycles. Sets position of balance and all correlation setting track location Earth at 2030 is that design. Powerful, isn't it? Why everything is its own formation of its own intelligence, of its own design. You're all coming back to your memory. And when your Earth goes back to its own memory, of its own system, of its own operation, its own calculation, remember, your Earth is already there, but you're coming to that level now. So what that means, the Earth is going to go on its own to recognize what's going on, right? So Growth is going finally, your understanding, right? And it comes back to you through all formation of someone at all. You become the sum of you that merges you and everything that you see, which is no longer perception. Perception is structure. Anything is structure. You get out of the structure, there's nothing to be structure of. Nothing exists, but you exist all at once in all timelines. To understand that is to understand you through modification. How it works and how it levels of you through navigation of your sin. Okay? And set design. Okay? That's the level the team is coming into now. Especially if you have a better understanding coming into your 12 senses now. Out of your 8 and into 12. And the species are out of 8 coming into 9. Right? Their balance screen is coming into 6 lines of 9. That provisions their cycles over pi. That's one circuitry land interference on one binary, one graph, 1 point graph, interference location of 0.1 interactions. Its applications. Boop, boop. See you in 5. Doo-doo.